Youth helps because you are completely clueless. Nothing is a problem. The most difficult thing we had to do was accept that they weren't going to be as good. As soon as we could get rid of Fosters, we got rid of Fosters. There's something better, and there's pretty much always something better. The brewery went into administration, which has meant, the past 12, 18 months have been pretty horrific. Someone from the council said you have to sell food with every beer you sell. No, we don't. But we went out to Costco and bought about 1,000 pot noodles.
This is the Leeds Business Podcast, and I'm your host, Phil Fraser. Before we start, I have one simple request. Please hit the follow or subscribe button on the app that you're listening on. How many times have you thought, wouldn't it be cool to run a bar? Today, we talk to someone who's done exactly that. And they've owned a brewery too. As you might expect, it's not as easy as you think. On today's Leeds Business Podcast, I'm delighted to have the co-founder of North Bar, John Gyngell. John, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing?
We're good. Now, it's taken us a while to get together for this, so a long time in the planning. Let's go all the way back to Town and Country Club. So you were at Town and Country Club as the manager there.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Well, firstly, it was probably the best job that you could ever wish for. It was the height of Britpop. And we every band that could have played, and we had some amazing times there, and felt very privileged to be able to walk across the stage and to have the run of the whole place really, and backstage and dressing rooms and so you saw some things, heard some things, but it was a fabulous job, and I enjoyed going back there to be able to actually just to go over old times. So what happened? So I moved to. I'm afraid. Firstly, we've probably got to get this in because I'm Manchester born. I'm afraid.
Okay, that's the end of the podcast. Stop recording.
It doesn't normally go down too well in Leeds. So I was a kind of a child of the hacienda and the kind of Manchester scene that happened there, which was, I think, has inspired a whole generation, particularly across the north of England. We went to a nightclub that was designed by an architect, and the flyers weren't just black and white print; they were designed by designers, and the music was there. So I think it was for possibly that generation the first time when architecture, music, design all came together, which was something that I particularly found inspiring. And I know that, I think it's responsible for perhaps the regeneration, of cities across the north of England and further afield. So I moved to Leeds to do a course at Leeds Polytechnic, as it was then, which is probably showing my age. And that was urban regeneration. So it's something that I'm interested in, and particularly that kind of human side of urban regeneration. So having been surrounded by those bars and the nightclubs and things that was happening at the time, I moved to Leeds, and Leeds was a few years behind. So kind of, I failed miserably at university, enjoyed managing the Town and Country Club brilliantly, and scrabbled together a few thousand quid from my job to open North Bar on New Brigham. And I did meet, I have to put this in, I did meet actually my co-founder, Christian, who was also working at the Town and Country Club. So we went off to do North Bar New Brigham, which was, and kind of still is, Kebab Alley. So it was a strange place to open a bar, and we had some funny looks. People thought it was a fish and chip shop. People thought, it didn't look like a pub. It didn't look like an Irish pub. Because Leeds didn't really at the time have bars. Mojo had just opened around the corner. We often refer to it as a bit of a bar desert. At the time, things were starting to happen on Core Lane, just. So yeah, I guess that's how we started North Bar.
So I mean, it's quite easy just to say, oh yeah, we just decided to open a bar. I mean, obviously, you've got a lot more experience now, but what was it like? I assume you were sort of shooting blind to just open a bar. What did you have to do to get how did you get a bar set up?
Well, I think youth helps because you are completely clueless. Nothing's a problem. We were, I was looking to open a bar when I was 21, 22, and you haven't got a clue about life. And everything's easy, I think. So I saved £10,000 from my job. And then we went to John Smith Brewery, and we got a loan for £20,000. Which meant it's funny because people often refer to North Bar as kind of the first craft beer bar in the country. But at the time when we opened, we had Kronenberg, Foster's, Beamish Red. It wasn't. But we made it happen. We did it ourselves. We got dirty. I remember the kind of pride at the end of the day when you got home, you got in the shower, and the shower water was black. It was kind of, it was great, and there was a certain sense of satisfaction from that. And we did a hell of a lot of the work ourselves, and really enjoyed that work as well. And I think kind of if you don't put that in, then maybe you don't care as much. But it was something that was definitely, it was passion. It wasn't ever daddy's money. It was something that we cobbled together and had to work at.
Was there any sort of great, glorious business plan, or was it just, we'll open a bar and sort of see where it goes?
It was, we haven't got anywhere to go. Let's open a bar like the bars that I liked in Manchester. That was it.
That was the plan.
That was the plan. I did write, as part of my course, a couple of business plans for a couple of sites around Leeds. When you're kind of 20 years old or whatever. And so, yeah, I've still got those business plans. And they were much better than the business plan that actually worked out.
What were the early days like? I mean, was it very hand to mouth? Was it make it up as you go along? I mean, how did those sort of first couple of years work out?
They were brilliant, awful. No, do you know what? It wasn't awful. There's nothing awful about it. There were nights when me and Christian sat in the front window to make it look busy with a half a lager. And then when someone came in, we could run behind the bar. It was, and then you'd walk round to Mojo or wherever else and go, oh my God, they're packed. And there was, 2 people in, which was us drinking half lagers. So it wasn't easy, but we made it work, and we made it work through going that extra mile with our customers. And I think, that level of, I'll probably come back to it later on, but that level of unreasonable hospitality where you do the unexpected for people, and you give something that people don't expect. And then people kept coming back, from the very early days. We did table service. And, you can imagine kind of a bar in Leeds in 1997 where someone came to your table and said, would you like another drink? Everyone thought we were giving it away for free. And it's kind of, no, I'm doing, those bars you really like in Spain and France and Italy. That's what we're doing. And it took quite a while for people to understand that. But then we built a really loyal bunch of regulars. We were very, well, not fortunate because we put the bar next to the Grand Theatre, but we got the people in from the theatre, we got the crew in, we got the people from costumes and the ticket office, and they started coming in, and obviously they're brilliantly creative people, and their network around Leeds was huge. Then we started getting the actors in, then we started getting the customers from the theatre in. So it kind of built really, we worked hard to look after those people, and that kind of cemented our place in that kind of as a kind of place of culture a little bit. We had artwork on the wall, which again, a pub with art on the wall, and it was, but we did what we loved, and we got the artists in, and we got the musicians in, and so it built from there. And I think people like to go where where there are creative people, because there's something about the energy that they give. So that was, it wasn't ever a plan. And did we fall lucky? Maybe, but we did put a bar next to a theatre,
Right.
so it wasn't purely chance.
Yeah. Okay. So at what point did you think, okay, we've done this once, let's do another one? That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So there was a point when I got down to the office, and the office at North Park is terrific. It's downstairs in the basement. It's smelly and all those things that it's sunlight is really nice, but we didn't see daylight for months and months. But there was a point when I went downstairs. I think it was a year in, and the desk was just covered with invoices. And I thought, yeah, we're a year in and we've got money in the bank. I probably need to sort this out and get on top of this. And that was a point I think we realised we've got business.
Right. Okay.
So we I guess then we started getting on top of things. We started knuckling down, getting a little bit of financial management. So my history is then I went and did with another friend, the Reliance on North Street, which then became Three's a Crowd, which then has since closed just recently. And then me and Christian did Further North up in Chapel Allerton. So I think the Reliance was probably 2002, which was 5 years later. Okay. I might get my numbers wrong there. And then Further North happened up in Chapel Allerton. We then opened the Cross Keys on Water Lane, which is a pub down there, which again, probably going back to my regeneration days, I liked the idea of the Reliance, which was slightly out of town. I liked the idea of the Cross Keys, which was down in the emerging Holbeck urban village. Unfortunately, our timing there was awful, because we opened that in 2007, had a brilliant first year. And then the crash of 2008 kind of closed all the businesses around there. All the architects kind of withdrew to their houses, etc. So then we had a real struggle down there, and we've since sold that on. But Holbeck's now is there are cranes everywhere, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And what learnings sort of did you accumulate as you were? I mean, that's at 1, 2, 3, 4. Now sort of 4 bars. What learnings did you accumulate over that period?
I think the biggest, the most difficult thing we had to do was accept that they weren't going to be as good, which is really, really difficult, because at North Bar we were working, from 10 in the morning till 2 o'clock at night. We were there. We knew what was happening. We were the people giving that service. We were delivering the hospitality. And then when you open a second site, you're not there. You're there for 50% of the time. You open a third and fourth, you're there for 10% of the time. It really kind of makes it and accepting that there had to be a drop off in level of service is something that we struggle to come to terms with. Being brutally honest, we probably really still struggle to come to terms with that. And that's, our mantra is, we have to really work hard at that and make sure we are as good, and the team are as good as it possibly can be. And it's hard kind of letting go. And I think the unfortunate thing for probably every business owner, when they grow, they start doing the job that A, haven't been trained for, B, don't like, C, probably aren't very good at. All those things, like HR and accounts, and it becomes this job that you think, I'm making it up to go along here. Yeah, which I think, if we're all honest, most business owners go through that process until you become a business owner, or an MD, or it's a very strange journey, because we all look at other business owners thinking they know what they're doing and brilliant, and the stark reality is most of us are making it up as we go along.
Absolutely. And I struggled with that almost the whole of my business ownership career. Was like, shit, somebody's going to work out soon that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm making it up.
Yeah.
But it's just go back to that point about accepting. You called it a drop in service, but it's that you're not doing it, you're managing somebody else doing it. And that brings in a new skill set, doesn't it? It's about motivation and recruitment and setting standards and all those sorts of things. And as you said, you started opening a bar. Then you become, like you say, you're managing people, you're setting standards, you're setting targets, you're a financial controller, you're an HR person.
Yeah.
How did you sort of navigate your way around that? Well, I mean, are there any sort of tips for people out there as they're growing their businesses?
Do you know what? I don't really know. I don't know if I'm qualified to give it a tip of how to do it. I'm that's not my forte. When we talk about KPIs and appraisals and such like, I have to be really honest and say I turn off.
Right.
I like being creative. I like building things. I like seeing people happy. So I guess I wouldn't like to give a tip to anyone about how to manage the team. Perhaps I'm good at it. I don't know, but I like looking after people.
Yeah.
I like knowing they're okay, and it's important to check in with people. But yeah, it's a very difficult skill, and one that I kind of like to defer to others, possibly.
Okay. You talked about having to sort of, was it close or sell one of the bars? What was that like? Because I suppose I'm guessing that's the first, and I'm using speech marks, failure of the business journey to date, was it?
Well, we with the Reliance, I sold that on to my business partner at the time. So that was cool. It was in great hands, and it was better off without me because my attention wasn't there. With the Cross Keys, it was open, it never closed, and we sold it as a going concern. But we really did struggle to make it work down there. One thing we've always found quite hard is food. And food venues, because we are not, we don't have that experience. Our experience is bar and wet-led operations. So I think when you start getting kitchens and chefs, it becomes a whole different ball game. And I think, I guess in terms of going back to your question then about managing people, I think people need to know that you can do it. So the team, I can walk into any bar in the world and know what I'm doing and know if someone's doing it right or wrong. I can't walk into a kitchen and do that. So I think possibly the issues we might have had with kitchens is the fact that, you walk into a kitchen and the chef knows that he knows better than you.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult skill. One that quite clearly I didn't have.
Okay. So we're at sort of 2008 in the journey so far. What happened next?
Then we opened a bar in Meanwood called Alfred, which is we kind of went on a bit of a journey to open kind of small suburban sites. Kind of a local, but not in the traditional pub sense. So we did Alfred in Meanwood. We've got further north Chapel Allerton, and we did a bar called Preston in Oakwood, which is slightly confusing. And then we opened a bar in Harrogate. Then we opened a bar in Otley. So that's kind of that journey across kind of North Leeds, our heartland, really. So that kind of took us up to 2012, 2013.
Okay. Now, before we continue, because I want to get into North Brewing, not North Bar, I need to tell our viewers and listeners about the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. The Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal has two sides to it. My side of it, every week, free of charge, I bring you inspirational, motivational, and fascinating guests like John every week. You listener and viewer have one thing to do, just the one thing, and that is to recommend this podcast to one other person that you feel will get benefit from it. That's it. That's the Leeds Business Podcast Fair Deal. Sound like a fair deal, John?
It sounds like a great deal. Sounds better than a free pint.
Well, I don't know about that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about bars. Let's talk about brewing. So where did North Brew, is it brewing or brewery?
Brewing, yeah.
North Brewing. Where did North Brewing happen?
So our journey with the bars is intrinsically linked to obviously drinks, and we've always our innovation as such is always, every day you've got to be better. So what we did, we always looked for, soonest, with no offense to people who drink Foster's, but as soon as we could get rid of Foster's, we got rid of Foster's for something better. And there's pretty much always something better. So we were the first bar in Britain to sell Brooklyn Lager. We were the first bar in Britain to sell Erdinger from Munich, Sierra Nevada from California. All of those were poured first at North Bar in Leeds. So we were always, then we became known as this beer bar and this beer mecca, and people would travel to North Bar to come and sample beers. And then we started to catch the first wave of the UK craft beer scene. So we were the first bar to pour Magic Rock from Huddersfield. We launched Northern Monk in Leeds, and various of the, everyone wanted to launch their beers with us. And we'd spoken for years about having a brew pub. Years and years ago, you probably going back 2006, 2007, we looked at a site at Tower Works, actually, in Holbeck Urban Village to do a brew pub. So we loved the idea of it, and then I think we just got to the point. I said to Christian, I said, "Do we want to, are we going to do this, or are we going to, not do it?" Let's just crack on. So we got together some cash and started North Brewing, and it was absolutely fantastic. We obviously had the outlets, we had the reputation. So the first few years we were based down at Taverners Walk, just near Sheepscar in Leeds, and it was thoroughly exciting. It was the journey was incredible. We didn't ever sell anything. What we did was portion things up. So someone would ring up and say, "Can I have 10 kegs?" We said, "No, you can't. You can have 2 or 3." So there was never, for a few years until, unfortunately, 2020, there was never really a need to go out and sell. It was a journey, and it was quite magical. And, we went around the world, and it was really exciting. And we were at the heart of that kind of UK craft beer scene, which at the time was thrilling, and it was almost like, going back to Manchester. It was kind of that there was a scene that was happening throughout the country and throughout Europe, and it was really exciting. And we had, a guy called Seb, who we thought was the best brewer in the country, and it was great.
What was different between running bars and running a brewery?
The difference was the consumer. You were removed from the consumer slightly. Although in a digital age, you're not that far removed, because you were in a bar. You get feedback like that. Someone will say, "I was in last night and it was rubbish," or "I was in last night, it was great." And then you probably then go from that. You were looking at the online reviews of your beers. So I guess it was you were slightly further away from your customers, but probably not, because that now there's an instant reaction to everything. So maybe that was the difference. It wasn't, it was kind of, I guess, B2B rather than B2C ish.
So you had B2B, so you were selling it to other people who were selling it, and you had B2C, and people were just buying it online.
Yeah. It was mainly B2 through the. So the business really was mainly B2B, and it was wholesales around Europe and the world and in the UK. And then as it became bigger, it was UK supermarkets. It was large chains around the country. So it became bit of a beast. And when you talk about running a company, you go from running 3 bars to then something that became ultimately quite large,
Right.
which again brought its own issues.
So, go on, you've alluded to it then. It brought its own issues.
Well, I guess the end point was that at the end of 2023, the brewery went into administration, which has meant the past 12, 18 months have been pretty horrific. I think it's again, business operators don't like to talk about the downside, but the stats say that the huge majority of businesses will fail. It's difficult to talk about because I think COVID really hit hospitality and the brewing industry really, really hard.
Okay, let's just talk about COVID as a thing first. So obviously you got how it affected the bars and how it affected the brewery. So just talk about those.
So the bars were more affected because they were just closed, and there was a period of time, I'm sure everyone remembers it, when we didn't know we were going to get furlough. Countries around the world were introducing furlough, and we were kind of sat there thinking, is anything going to happen? And eventually it did. So furlough really helped. It gave us a bit of peace of mind. We got some help from landlords. Some were great, some were awful. So it was very, very difficult. And we unfortunately, we had to take on a huge amount of loans. We took on the Seabills loans to cover that period of time, because without it, we'd be closed. Eventually, when we could, we turned bars into bottle shops, etc. But it was a really difficult time for the bars. I remember one day I went out for a run by myself and did a loop. I did about 6 of the bars, and they're all there's notes in the window saying sorry we closed. It was miserable. It was sad. On the other hand, the brewery, again, I'll probably refer back to fortune a little bit, but it's not fortunate that you bought a canning line, because it cost money and it was part of the plan. So we had a canning line, and we shifted really, really quickly. Again, I'll say we're fortunate. We just got a really good deal with Tesco in the February of that deal that was going to launch in the April of that year. Wasn't fortunate. We got a deal with Tesco, so we started canning, and we started home deliveries. It was really exciting. Someone, I think as a business owner or entrepreneur, someone puts a problem in front of you, you go, okay, how do we navigate that problem? You don't shut down. You don't go, right, okay, that's the full stop. There's a problem. We'll do something else. You go, right, okay, how do we go around it? How do we go over it? How do we go under it? So COVID with the brewery was with the bars, you felt helpless because there was nothing you could do because you were closed. You could open a bottle shop eventually, and there were some ridiculous things that happened. That some of the rules and we got a call one day when we had a bottle shop, and someone from the council said you have to sell food with every beer you sell. And no, we don't. But we went out to Costco and bought about 1,000 pot noodles. and it just, you go back, this is madness. And the next day we got a call from the council saying you don't have to do that. And it was like, okay, what are we going to do with these 1,000 pot noodles? So the bars, you felt helpless. The brewery was thoroughly exciting, and you could change, that word pivot that we all said a lot. And we went out and we worked it. And, I went out in a van doing home deliveries, and it was amazing. Me and my at the time 5-year-old lad went round to people's houses, and the people around North Leeds and further afield were just amazing and so supportive. And you'd go to one house and say, I could go to the supermarket and buy beer for a fifth of the price, but I'm buying from you because I need to. And you walk back down people's drives in tears. It was gorgeous, and be eternally grateful to those people that supported us. It was amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's fill in the gap then between COVID and administration.
Oh, blimey. How long you got? I think we became big. We opened our new facility, or we signed for our new facility at the start of March 2020.
Ouch.
In hindsight, if we'd have had another month on that, would we have done that? No, because we committed to a spend, and it was a big spend. We had investors lined up, one of which stayed, 3 or 4 of whom didn't when COVID happened. So we're in a position that we signed for this building. We didn't have the cash, so we used our Siebel's loans to fund the development of that. So then, you've got probably another year of bars and pubs not buying beer. So although it was exciting with the brewery, our wholesalers weren't selling beer. We weren't delivering to pubs and bars around West Yorkshire and further afield. So, turnover wasn't what it was. And then, you throw in interest rate rise, the war in Ukraine, the grain price went up, almost doubled overnight. Really, what might sound insignificant, but CO2 prices went through the roof. The list is kind of the cost of living crisis, and the list really is endless. And I don't want to point the finger at things, but the percentages add up, and when your major ingredient doubles overnight, when another ingredient doubles, it's pretty difficult then to get to that point where you were prior to COVID. And I think we took on a lot of debt, and should we have taken that on? No. But we were in the position, and I think and also as an entrepreneur, you always see the upside. And it was really unfortunate. We had, we were talking to investors late into 2023. We had a couple of deals lined up that would have been perfect, but for whatever reasons, and it was internal reasons, it wasn't external reasons, those didn't happen. And I don't really want to kind of get into the whys and the wherefores of other shareholders, etc. But we could have and should have been all right. But unfortunately, we got to the point where we had to say, do you know what, enough is enough. Because we'd spent, you spent a year and a half kind of or possibly since COVID, we'd spent 3 years, every single day, you're being punched in the face, really. And you get up and you go again, and then you get punched in the face. And I think there becomes a point when you look at your family and you look at the people around you, and they're saying, just be throwing the towel. No, it's to carry on that analogy, but it was horrible, and it's a horrible process, and it's not something that I'd wish on my worst enemy. I think a lot of people think of administration as it's a great deal for the owners and they're getting out, but not when you've got personal guarantees, etc., etc. And it's and do you know what? Not when you've got a business that you love. So it's really difficult because from the outside I think, oh, they did a deal, it's great, they've moved on, and that doesn't happen. And the past 12 months, it's been about picking yourself up and going again. And the human beings are pretty amazing, because we are pretty good at picking ourselves up and going again. So yeah, it's. I mean, but do I look back on it and did I love the huge majority of it? Yes. So is it awful? It happened, yes. And did some people, lose money? Yes. And that's really, really unfortunate. But I don't think there's anything that anyone in the business could have done differently, apart from not take on that debt. But we were in a point where we had to.
What did it feel like, I suppose, on the day that you all sat down around the table and go, right, that's it, to use your analogy, throwing the towel in. What was that specific day like?
Oh, it's weird. When kind of people refer to, almost kind of being in a corner of the room and watching it, I guess it was a bit like that. Very surreal, very out of body, I think. It was sad, but it was, there were a lot of, we had got to a place where we'd fought very hard to do a deal with, on the other side, with someone. In hindsight, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. We thought it was. Everything we did throughout that process was what we did, what we thought was the right thing to do. In hindsight, that hasn't worked out, which again is makes it doubly unfortunate, because there were other people around that might have been a different outcome again, but I can't look back on North Brewing as bad or sad, because it was 5 or 6 years of the most incredible times, and really exciting. And in terms of brand building, in terms of doing something brilliant and inspiring, it was great. And I've got, as a result, I've got friends around the world that I can call into any city in the world, and there'll be someone wanting a beer, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. Right. So every week we ask our guests to give us a how-to. So John, tell us what I know you've alluded to this already, but tell us what your how-to is, and tell us how to do it.
So I was going to talk about how to build a hospitality brand, and I think you can talk about innovation or the team, or the multifaceted things we can talk about. But there's the extra. Because we can all do those bits, but it's the extra. Why does someone go somewhere? What makes them go to their local pub? And it used to be, and still is to a certain extent, you walk in, someone says, "Hi Brian," the usual, and that makes you feel great. That makes you feel a little bit special. And it's what we've always tried to do, from the very beginning at North Bar. We've gone that extra mile, or we've really tried hard to go that extra mile. So I think there's a book called Will Gennarder, and he's a New York-based restaurateur, and the book's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And he talks about there was a time when, and this is the Michelin-starred restaurants, and he has a group of 4 people in, 2 couples who had come from Boston, and they were doing New York restaurants. They were doing all of the experiences, all of the top high-end restaurants around New York, and they were sat in his restaurant. And he overheard them talking about they haven't had the New York hot dog experience. So what did he do? He went out onto the street, went to a cart, and bought a hot dog, brought it back into the kitchen, made it look amazing, put it on these plates, and said, "There you go." And they've told that story, and that story has become legend. And that's what we talk about. That's what we want to do. I was in further north, which is where I am now, on Friday night last week, and it was busy. It was full. And a couple came in, opened the door, and I had a look round, and they wanted to sit down. They didn't want to stand. They wanted to sit down. And, I was there thinking, oh God, what can I do? How do I keep these people? What can, and I wasn't working. I was with my partner. We were having, a few drinks, and I'll name check her because it was amazing. Sadie, who works here. There was a couple about a minute later that got up to leave. And Sadie opened the door, ran down the street, called these people back and said, "I've got a table for you." And it was perfect. It was exactly, do you know what? I didn't think she was going to do it. And I didn't prompt her to do it, but it was perfect. And that's what we try to get everyone to be like and to feel. That how great is that? That really is. Those people walking down the street and someone runs after you and says, "I've got your table." You're gonna talk about that. You're gonna tell your friends about that. You're gonna stay. Do you know what? If you don't tell your friends, you're gonna stay for another pint. And that's, I guess, is that a masterclass? It's just what we try to do. And I think kind of going that extra step really does make a difference, and how people feel.
And often with these sort of things, it's actually not that difficult, not that complicated, and often doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. It's free, isn't it? Yeah. Being nice is free. You know, with our team, we don't look for people who have had brilliant training. We look for people who say hello and goodbye and how are you doing? You know, I remember there was at North Bar once, there was a woman came in for an interview. And at the time I was up a ladder putting Christmas decorations up. And the first thing she said was, "Can I give you a hand?" Yeah, you've got the job. That's the interview done. Because that's it. That's all I need to know about you. You know, if she'd have sat there quiet, just watching me, or no. Can I give you a hand? Yeah, you've got the job. And that's the personality that we look for. Those are the people we look for. That, do you say hello? You know, that's all it takes. Hello, thank you, goodbye. Can I get you anything else? And it's just that extra bit.
Okay, so if you go into, just name check all your bars now, just so everybody knows where they have to go.
Right, this is a test now. Right, North Bar, New Briggate, the original. Further north, Chapel Allerton. Alfred, Meanwood. I'm doing up my fingers here. Preston and Oakwood. North Bar, Harrogate. North Bar Social in Otley. North Bar, Manchester.
Boom.
And we've just opened one at Air Park in Leeds, South Leeds, which is just by the new Air Park development, which is really exciting. So I think that's 8. I think that's right.
Okay. I think, as you were saying, I'm North Leeds as well, so I know I've done further north and I know I've done Preston's. I've probably been in North Bar in town. So that's 3. 3 out of 8's not 3 out of 8's not bad. Not bad. You should do a bar crawl promotion of some sort.
We have done bus tours actually as part of Leeds Indie Food. So those were very messy nights. They would do bus tours and bus out to Otley, but we've just launched an app which will a kind of loyalty rewards app. So that will encourage people to kind of one of the things we're going to do is that we'll give an extra reward for people who have kind of nailed all 8. So that's
because you're Manchester, you might not remember this. Tetley's used to do the Tetley, what do they call it? The Tetley pub crawl, and you had a card with a stamp on,
right?
And you had to go through all
that's
the different.
Great. Yeah, we did something similar at North Bar once. We had a beer passport, which was that you got a stamp for every country that you tasted around the fridge, which was really good. So I think we're looking at kind of doing so much more like that. So that beer passport or the passport around the sites will be something we're going to do.
Just end on some marketing chat. That's cool. Good. In fact, as you've been talking, I've been thinking, and I'll put links to all of these in the show notes. We've had Art Bar as a guest on here. We've had Northern Monk. We've had Horsforth Brewery. We've 3 weeks ago we did Mark from Beer Hawk.
Right. Okay.
So I think my interests are sort of starting to dominate the podcast.
There's a theme here, Phil. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, before we go, we ask all our guests to give another Leeds business a shout out. So, John, who are you going to give a shout out to?
Cool. I'm going to shout out Zeal. It's a marketing company led by a brilliant woman called Jane Slimming. She's it's hard out there, and the energy that she's got is infectious, and I think Jane deserves a shout out.
And I have to agree. And actually, Jane has also been a guest on the podcast, so there'll be a link to Jane's interview in the show notes. John, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you hit the follow button so every new episode gets sent straight to your phone. See you next week.